What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast in existence that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores A-N-T. Give me a follow on the old Twitter. Give me a follow on the old TikTok if you'd like as well. Same handle, pro, 2 underscores A-N-T. In tonight's episode, I have a really fantastic guest from the Patriots side of things, but also from the overall NFL knowledge side of things to a fellow, film analyst like myself, dude who grinds tape, understands ball. We're going to talk ball. We're going to talk scheme, structures, tendencies, really get into the nitty gritty of the X's and O's for this Bills Patriots matchup. That is a pivotal one for both teams, not only in the AFC East, but the AFC as a whole. I'm starting to see people trickle in for the comments, and I'm just going to address this now. There is a big game tomorrow, but I want to address the big important thing in the room. Jason said, literally mainly here to see if Ant has updated the tree yet. And then Jessica said, still November, so I guess not. Psych, Jessica, you're dead wrong. Move the little tree over there, but dressed it up with some holiday garland. If you notice, there's some like faux bulbs, some faux bulb action on the tree. And then on the right, we got the big guy. We play for keeps here on Disguise Coverage. We got the full-on Christmas tree over here with the fake white stuff. I don't know the proper terminology for that. We got some red garlands, some red bulbs. We got some different colored ornaments. We got a lot going on. A lot going on. And you all know this show is just a medium to be able to showcase the trees. But I appreciate the appreciation from Jason saying, oh my God, the tree, I'm not disappointed. Not only did he update the tree, but he added a larger, more epic second tree. This is why I subbed to Cover One. You're damn right, Jason. And yeah, I play for keeps. I spend hours every week grinding tape on the most minuscule things. Did you not think that I would bring my top level tree game for the holidays? Come on, Jason, be better than that. I'm getting sidetracked with this intro. Enough of the tree. Very excited for the tree. Very excited for this matchup. And very excited to bring on my guest for this show, Mr. Taylor Kyles. Taylor, like I was telling you offline, I was pumped to bring you on for this show because I was just scrolling on the old Twitter looking for somebody who broke down film of the Pats, and I came across you and went to your page, and it was just film and good comments and film and good comments. And I'm like, this guy gets it. I like him. I want him on the show. And here you are. So welcome. And in case people don't know what you do or aren't familiar with your work, tell them who you are, what you do, likes, dislikes, what's your sign, anything and everything you want. The floor is yours.
I mean, first of all, that was genuinely one of the best intros I've ever seen in my
thank
life.
you.
I was thoroughly entertained. I forgot that I was supposed to be talking on here. But yeah, I am Taylor Kyles. I am a next-gen stats researcher for NFL media. It's getting towards the end of the workday. So
yeah, we're all falling apart.
A little bit. But I also do some work for Pat's Pulpit for SB Nation. You can find a lot of my stuff there. And if you just want to see some of the content that Anthony was talking about, you can find me on Twitter at TKYLES39. And that 39 is for Danny Woodhead, in case you're wondering.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, deep cut a little bit.
Nice. You know what's funny is when I saw your handle, I literally was like, I wonder what the 39's for.
Everybody always wonders because it's like, is it Lawrence Maroney? Is it Brandon?
That's what I was going to say. I was like, he's a big Lawrence Maroney fan.
Not Danny Woodhead. Because I didn't even start watching football till 2010. And that was when Woodhead had his little breakout year for the Pats. So I'm just like, who was this little dude making all these plays? So ever since then, I fell in love. My first Patriots shirt, like jersey, whatever, was a Danny Woodhead. Nice. So yeah, he's near and dear to my heart.
Nice. He won me a couple fantasy matchups throughout his lifetime. And then when he went to the Chargers, I was actually happy for him. One, because he wasn't going to be a Pat anymore. But two, I thought he was really going to work out in San Diego. And then he got hurt and just really didn't. He was just such a fun dude who knew his role and his niche. And he was legitimately good at it. And that's a sick reference that the 39 in your Twitter handle is for Danny Woodhead. That is awesome. Because how many Pats dudes you could be like, yeah, I'm a huge Brady guy, or yeah, Belichik, no one's going to be like Danny Woodhead. That's my guy. That's the guy.
That's me, man.
Man, that is you. Well done. Well done. Taylor, no Danny Woodhead in this matchup, but there's a lot of other guys in this matchup. Coaches, players, schemes, structures, tendencies, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to dive into that in this episode. Like I mentioned earlier, one, I wanted to bring up the super chat from earlier. Ned, I appreciate you being here. And thank you very much for the monetary donation. And also appreciating me looking fresh. And there's a lot going on. Shouting out a Merry Christmas. I'm also liking, Taylor, real quick, just want to address some things in the chat. The white stuff on the tree is called flocking? Or is it frosting? Is it flocking? I don't know. I didn't know that either. I'm appreciate the chat is you mentioned it earlier when you came on. You were appreciating the dedication of the chat, talking to some
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
on the tree. It's a very informative chat and live and active tonight on this episode. As always, as we do here on Disguise Coverage, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, theorems, maxims, ideologies, whatever you folks got in the live chat, throw it up into the chat. I will bring it up as I can throughout this entire discussion, throughout the entire episode. Super chats, of course, get priority because one, I respect the monetary donation. Two, I see the color and it attracts my eyes, and then I bring you up to the forefront. Taylor, let's dive right into it. You want to start on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball for the Pats? I'll kind of let you lead where this discussion starts.
I'll say start with defense so I can just get all the Josh Allen talk out of the way.
Okay. Let's start with the defensive piece. I like that because in my heart, I'm a defensive guy. I mean, the name of the show is Disguise Coverage, but I do respect the offensive side. But let's start on that defensive side. Let's start with just the proverbial Bill Belichik, what he does. He always likes to take away something from your game. And it could be something large scale. It could be something minuscule. It could be something player related. It could be something scheme related. As we come into this game, Bills versus Pats, what do you expect Bill Belichick to try and aim to take away on the Bills side of the ball? Is it Josh Allen's dual threat piece? Is it that mobility? Is it his legs? Is it Stephon Diggs? Is it just the deep passing game as a whole? Where do you think he starts in terms of focusing on what to take away from the Buffalo Bills?
So I definitely think, it's one of the most explosive offenses in the league. So the first thing you got to do is make sure they're not throwing over your head. Okay. Now, Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the league. And while he does have the ability, obviously, to get downfield, most of his work is kind of in the underneath game because he's great after the catch. He's really good at separating. I was looking at some tape and I saw when they're in those like two receiver sides and he's all the way out wide, it's like a slant, an in, or a hitch every time. So I think to a degree, obviously, you want to pay more attention to Diggs. If you get the chance, you want to hit him in his routes, disrupt him, maybe pay a little more extra attention to him. But at the end of the day, I think Josh Allen is the top priority. So one, you got to make sure that he can't throw it over your head. But also, and this is what killed the Patriots last season, is you got to make sure that he can't kill you outside of the pocket. Now, obviously, easier said than done. Like, you're not going to keep Josh Allen in the pocket the entire game. You're not going to stop him from making insane plays in the game. But you want to at least limit them and try to contain him. So one of the biggest things I noticed last season was what the Pats would do a lot is they'd have one aggressive rush. So they'd have a guy kind of going around. And then what happens is you get that escape hatch from the person looping around. But you also like to have a defensive tackle or a linebacker kind of replacing to make sure that when that alley's open, you're more or less setting up a trap so that Josh Allen's going to scramble, but then there's a defender right there to take him down.
Yes.
Now, the Pats ran into issues where, one, you'd have defensive tackles that couldn't keep up with him once he got outside, or you'd have Juwan Bentley, who is great for what his role is. He's a bigger, old-school linebacker. You're not going to see a lot of guys who take on blocks the way he does, and he's sufficient in coverage because I think he's gotten smarter. He understands angles. He gets proper depth, all those things, and maximizes his skill set. But at the same time, he's not the kind of guy you want tracking down Josh Allen in the open field.
No, he's a thumper. You're not looking for him to play in space.
Right. So what I think they're going to do now, and you saw it in the offseason, they brought in they already had Raekwon McMillan. He was hurt last year. Getting him back's been huge. He's a real rangy guy. But they did get Mack Wilson from the Browns. And what he's been doing lately is he's kind of been in their pass rush groups as either one, he's just following the back sometimes, but what you see a lot is he'll be a spy, or he'll be one of those loopers where when they try to crash and condense the pocket, Mack Wilson's the guy who's kind of tracking the quarterback, whether that's on a loop or whether he's just kind of watching him. So I think that's going to be a big factor, and I think it'll help the Pats a lot this time around. But again, Allen is impossible to defend consistently. You really just want to try to take away the things he does best and get him a little bit outside of his comfort zone. But I mean, the guy's fantastic, even with the elbow injury. Really, the only way I see it really affecting him is in the quick passing game when he's trying to throw underneath. It feels like maybe there's some discomfort, or I don't know if there's anything going on with him mechanically necessarily. But you just want to try to make sure he doesn't kill you on those extended dropbacks, and then just stop him from trying to throw deep against you.
I like where your head's at. I would do the same thing. If we're looking at how the Pats look to defend Josh Allen, so some of the numbers I was going through this year, and a lot of it came from, I mentioned it to you in the DM yesterday when we were chatting, when I put some of my notes forward to you, what the Lions started to do this past week, anytime the Bills were in empty, they were bringing pressure, whether they were showing it outright and bringing it, or it was a simulated pressure, just playing games. But a lot of times, especially on third downs, and when the Bills would go empty, they would bring pressure. They were coming after Josh Allen. So I looked into some numbers. I was like, I wonder how Allen's doing against pressure. So this year, of the 44 quarterbacks that have at least 10 attempts versus 5 or more rushers, Josh Allen is 34th out of those 44 in EPA, and he's 35th in rating. Ironically, to tie these two QBs together, Mac Jones is last in both of those. He's last in EPA and last in rating against 5 or more rushers. If you're looking at how the Pats are going to come after Josh Allen in this game, I mean, you got Judon, leads the league in sacks. He's had a terrific year. They also have some other pieces up front who I don't want to say like some of the parts, because I feel like it's disrespectful to the individual players, but they can get after the quarterback as a whole, even when they're just rushing 4. Do you expect to see them try to heat up Allen and blitz a little bit more? Or do you think they kind of stay true and just rush 4 and play coverage behind it and try and contain with different, whether it's, aggressive spies or different containment options?
We're going to see a lot of different things. And that's one thing is Allen's smart enough that you can't just have one rush plan against him, because then they figure it out. And that's where he says, okay, if you're just going to rush 4 and then maybe send a twist one side, then they'll find out some way where he can still make it work within the structure of what the play is, or if he needs to figure out how he can extend plays based on the same thing. So like last year, what you saw is sometimes they'll send a 3-man rush, or you'll see the edge defenders in their 5-man surfaces, or even sometimes in their 4-down surfaces. They'll both drop and try to take away the crossing routes or those quick underneath throws. And then they'll have a linebacker actually blitz the inside with kind of defensive tackle types, really kind of being the edge rushers. So what the idea of that is, you create issues in the pocket, try to flush him out, and then you'd like for someone like a Judon or like a Josh Uche to be able to have the range to when he gets outside the pocket, like, okay, they're extending. I don't really need to worry about the quick passing game. Now I got to get back down on Josh Allen. But at the same time, you saw in the playoff game where they used that exact same play. It was Allen against Judon in space, and as athletic and freaky as Judon is, it was a mismatch, and he slipped him. And I was like, oh my God, that's the first time I've ever seen Judon not look like the freak athlete that he is. So you're going to see that. I think you're going to definitely see a ton of 4-man rushes. Okay. And from there, it's going to kind of be a matter of, okay, do you want Judon coming crashing down inside? So you want inside moves where you have somebody looping around? Do you want him kind of getting around the edge to flush Allen? That's, I think, where it's going to get interesting, exactly what their plan is there. But they're definitely going to try to heat him up as well. Now, if they can get to Allen with 4, I think they'll lean more towards that. But especially later in the game, if you see that Allen's getting way too much time back there, Belichik will not hesitate. He'll send 5-man pressures if he wants him to get it out quickly. And I actually want to know what you've seen from him against like cover 0 and those kind of looks where it's just, you got to get it out quickly. But I think he'll kind of mix in some cover 0 as well, and maybe longer yardage situations where it's like, all right, make him get it out quickly and then come up and tackle. But at the same time, the Bills are smart. So that's why I was wondering from your perspective. So when they get cover 0, are they just running like outs, throw the outs? Are they trying to keep blockers in to go downfield? Or what have you seen on those kinds of plays?
Very good question. I appreciate you asking me questions on my show, because not a lot of guests ask me questions. And I just sit here and I'm just like, okay. So it's funny, earlier in the year, and actually the Chiefs game was a good microcosm of this. Early in the Chiefs game, when Spags was trying to heat up Josh, they were trying to go hot and they misexecuted a couple times. It was there, but McKenzie fell down in the red zone and they just kind of were hitting things. As the game went on, what they tried doing, and it worked out for the Bills, they were just trying to gum up everything up front and just give Josh enough time. And that's where you saw the deep touchdown to Gabe Davis and the deeper touchdown, like 20-yarder to Stephon Diggs. That's what they've continued to do when they've gotten those cover 0 and those pressure looks. Try and gum up the works and then take a shot play, either, vertical up the sideline or gouge them in the middle of the field in the intermediate. We saw one of them in this Detroit game. Lions, yes, it was cover 0. Lions show pressure and they bring pressure, and Allen just keeps backing up, and he hits McKenzie on it was like a 9-yard out, but based on how far Allen was in his drop, it was like a 20-something yard throw because he was deep in the pocket to avoid the rush. But as the game went on, the pocket wasn't holding. The offensive line wasn't holding. And that's where my concern comes in for the Buffalo Bills in terms of what they're going to do, because Deion Dawkins is out for this game already. Most likely we're going to see David Quessenberry in at left tackle. So you've got Quessenberry, you've got Saffold, you've got Mitch Morse at center, returning Mitch Morse after injury. You've got Ryan Bates at guard, and then you've got Spencer Brown at right tackle. What the Lions did, they did an excellent job of using wide alignments and using those cover zero looks and those pressure packages and forcing the Bills tackles to play out in space. And Spencer Brown, athletic as he is, you can get him with one-on-ones. He struggles with balance, I think is the biggest thing for me. For someone who's so athletic, he'll be on a 45-degree set and he goes for a punch, but he stops bringing his feet. And all you have to do is chop the arm down and he'll fall almost like flat on his face. And
against that's a Judon specialty.
I was literally going to say, and up against a guy like Judon who will get you with that in a heartbeat, let alone almost anything. Like you want him to beat you with power, cool. You want him to beat you with technique, cool. You want him to beat you around the arc or cut back inside, cool. I look to see if the Patriots are going to really try and bring those pressure looks off of what Detroit did this year, off of what, honestly, too, what I know the Miami game earlier in the year is a bit of an outlier because of the injuries and the heat and all the weirdness, but Miami did a very similar or had a very similar game plan. They showed pressure and either brought it or they dropped out and were throwing simulated pressure looks.
A lot of cover two, right, from those looks?
Yeah, throwing those different pieces in there. Really trying to tax Josh mentally, but more importantly, attacking the hell out of the offensive line. This is a group that even at their best, if they're 100% healthy across the board for the Bills, they're still like a middling offensive line. They're not bad, but they're not great. But they do have vulnerabilities. And I look at what the Lions did with Alim McNeil and Hutchinson and a couple other of their edge rushers who were just getting consistent pressure. And then you look at the Patriots who don't have a ton of like studs aside from Judon, but you look at everybody on their line with what Lawrence Guy offers, with what Godchow offers you, with what Wise can do, with what Uche can do, like, or if they're blitzing Bentley from the second level, he's a thumper in the run game, but he's also a thumper in the blitz game too. I look for them to bring pressure, and I think right now, I think that advantage heavily leans towards the Patriots. And if the Bills can't gum it up, you obviously got to start to throw hot and try and mix in some of that short piece. But if you get too predictable, that just feeds into what Belichik wants. What they've done up to this point this year, again, is trying to gum the works up and attack you deep, really gouge you and make you be like, well, we just got hit for 25 yards. Let's never do that again. But over the last several weeks, and especially against Detroit, their offensive line hasn't held up. And you can confuse this offensive line if you really have to sit and make them read stunts and twists and games, which again, it is a bit, I know you're looking at your chops, like, and that's not, I don't want to make it seem like that's like a thing that no offensive line can do, but that's hard. If you're sitting there with a 5-man offensive line, also what the Bills would do in this instance, 5-man offensive line, then they'll have a running back and a tight end as the chip help. Very much what the Rams did last year. Then they'll release those chippers as the underneath routes or kind of the bailout check down for Josh Allen if need be. So they'll have those 2 chippers plus the 5 offensive linemen. So you got 7 right there. If you're also showing 7 or 8 at the line, you got to ID everything and see what's up. And if you're thinking, okay, like Bentley's coming and then on the snap, he takes a step up. So you go to honor him and then he's like, psych, just kidding. I'm actually dropping, but you've stepped here. Now all of a sudden there's a clear pathway. Like that's a hard thing to deal with consistently. And it just seems like, again, the Detroit game is a perfect example. They were just winning in a variety of ways. They would show pressure and they'd win inside or they'd win on the outside or again, like simple, I don't want to say simple to disrespect anyone too much, but just like a simple tech stunt where like the tackle just goes in hard and the end is coming in clean. Like you can just mug everything up for them and really create some free runners, and knowing what the Pats have up front, like I think that's an advantage for the Patriots.
Absolutely. Because I was going to say, if they're showing like it's a 5-man protection and the Patriots know, all right, they're probably going to send Knox out. They may like have Singletary blitz ID and then get out. What I think they'll definitely do is put Mac Wilson over the centers. So then they kind of check to a 5-man, like, all right, everybody's got somebody. And that's where I think they could create some real problems with the tackles. But then in those looks where they're going to have the extra pass blockers, I think that's where you're going to start seeing the inside stunts where Judon starts looping it inside the pocket. And what I'm hoping they do in those situations is have guys like Uche and Wilson inside and ready to loop back outside and kind of give those tackles a little, like you said, something extra to think about, especially if they're not communicating those things well to begin with. If the inside is the strength, then, try your hand and see if you can get some inside pressure and what the blitzes do to that degree. But the more I look at what they did last year and the more I see what's worked when things have worked against the Bills. You really just have to make sure that, like, yes, the pocket is messy, but at the same time, you have those reinforcements on the outside. So I think it'll definitely be an interesting little chess match. And again, like you said, once they bring in those extra guys, you can just bring guys down the line of scrimmage. So it still becomes one-on-one matchups because you're just outnumbering the guys they have protection.
Yeah, that's very fair. And, even continue with that conversation, like I'm looking for, so the Bills in week 16 last year, they had the victory in Foxboro and then they win again in the playoffs, but it was two very different games. The Foxboro game was very much rely on Josh Allen. He had over 300 passing yards, 64 rushing yards, 47 pass attempts. The offense was him. Then you go into the playoff game, 25 pass attempts for Josh Allen. They have their gap scheme identity in the run game. They run 54% gap runs on the year. They're bringing in heavier packages with Reggie Gilliam, and they're able to run the ball more and keep the Patriots off balance. I think the Bills need to do that again in this game. Like, multiplicity is more important than ever in today's NFL with how defenses want to keep the top on and keep everything in front of them and rally and choke things down and force players into the kill spot and make tackles and make hits. And then you combine it with simulated pressures and creepers and everything that they're able to do. You have to be able to stay multiple. And the Bills' run game, when I say run game, I mean the non-Josh Allen run game. I'm not talking QB powers and I'm not talking scrambles. I'm talking runs from the running backs, the Danny Woodheads of the world. Well, even if he wasn't like more a runner, more receiver. I'm getting off track again. They need that piece. And especially with what the Patriots do from a defensive back standpoint, just the amount of chess pieces that they'll throw out there. It's hard watching like Pat's defense tape because you have to be like, okay, who's on the field this time? Is it Phillips? Okay. Is it Peppers? Okay. Where are they? Okay. Who's here? Okay. Where's Duggar? Okay. Like, that allows them to start to get into their bag in terms of what they want to do, in terms of disguising coverage, in terms of bringing different looks. The strength of this Pats team, especially from a coverage standpoint, is not within the linebackers. Like you mentioned, like we're looking at Bentley and we're looking at Tavai, like they're not the coverage type. The Mac Wilsons of the world are, and the Raekwon McMillans are more skewed towards that world. But you try and force the Pats into more base looks with three linebackers and then try and run the ball. I want to see more under center play action from the Bills in this game, but in general, more motion, more layering of things, and more of a sustainable, actionable, functional piece from the run game. And again, this isn't even just Patriots specific. This is in general for the Bills offense, but especially in a game like this with a front that the Patriots have and with how the Bills have struggled to protect when they've gone empty. Some of the chip help tape against Detroit is rough. Like, you've got edge rushers that are not Aiden Hutchinson getting chipped and they're just working through the chipper and then completely going untouched by the tackles and getting right onto Josh Allen. Yes, it's not good. That is the exact face I made. It's not a great thing. So you've got, again, I'm just focusing on this most recent game. Like, the Lions are show 7 and they'll only bring 4, but they'll create like 2 free runners out of that. And they've got guys going through the chipper and going through the tackle. I don't think you got away with it a bit against Detroit because they had some issues on the back end and because they weren't able to get home. And again, Josh Allen, he's an alien. He can make 1 or even 2 guys miss in the pocket and evade and get out. But I don't see that regularly happening against the Patriots. And it's funny how you asked like the cover 0 piece, because some of the film I'm going to show on the back end of this episode, once you stab me in the back and leave, some of the film I'm going to show.
We get another game. We get another game.
That is true. That is very true. Not if the Bills lose. I'm superstitious, so I'll be like, it's Taylor's fault. He's never allowed to come back. Just kidding.
I'll take my punishment. I'll be sad. I'll miss you.
But you have a Pats win, so it's all good. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Knock on wood. I'm sincerely though, like, I am super superstitious. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't invite you back. Again, we're going off the rails. Shocking.
I got ADHD. I get it.
Right. I'm same boat. That cover 0 piece was an issue. And it's something where the Bills have been able to take advantage. Like, you go into a game against the Lions and you're thinking like, okay, especially with no Jeff Okudah, and you're looking like, okay, like, we could take advantage of these corners all day. Oh, they want to go cover 0? Okay, cool. Like, where's Stephon Diggs? Where's Gabe Davis? Like, let's make this thing work. And they couldn't handle the pressure, whether it was coming or whether it was just showing it and then bringing a simulated and still only rushing 4, let alone if they actually rushed 5 or 6. It was a problem, especially on the back end of that game for the Bills, and against a team that can smell blood like the Patriots, that I think overall I love Alim McNeil and I love Aiden Hutchinson. I like McNeil more than Hutchinson this year for the Lions. But if you're looking at the Pats front across the board, I mean, they're more technically sound. They're more responsible. I would probably say they're better coached. No disrespect to Detroit. I think that's a matchup that skews in favor of the Pats. The Bills have to have some semblance of a running game in this game. They can't let the Pats come out and just be like, oh, cool, let's heat up Josh. Let's heat up Josh. Let's heat up Josh.
And the thing there is with the run game, if they just go straight under center and try to run that way, I don't think they're going to have a lot of success because the Patriots have thrived this season against conventional rushing attacks.
Okay.
Now, when there's the threat of a quarterback that's not Sam Ehlinger as a potential runner, that's where the problems have been. And we saw it in the playoff game. They were getting shredded. I know the Bills don't use as much RPO this year with Ken Dorsey, but what was shredding them was the numbers game created with the RPOs, because that was when they could actually get linemen up to Kyle Duggar when he's your pseudo linebacker. And that's where it was just like, these guys are just getting gashed because linemen are getting to the second level. Defensive linemen aren't winning one-on-one. And that's where you started seeing a lot of the production there. And then especially the space it created when they did decide to pass. Yeah. But if they just go straight under center, I'm not sure it's going to work out because Devon Godchaux is having a fantastic season. Lawrence Guy is Lawrence Guy still. Dietrich Wise has been better in every facet of his game. He was really more of a pass rush specialist for most of his career.
Yeah.
But this year he's voted a captain. He's playing legitimately almost every snap. I think he's like 285, 290 pounds now. Is more of like an old school 4-3 type of defensive end where he's a really big guy, but he's got great length and he's put on weight. So he's been a little bit better in the ground game. And then on the edges, Anthony Jennings, who's from Alabama, was quiet in the beginning of his career, but this year you're seeing him get more reps on early downs. He's been fantastic setting the edge. Judon, when he's on his game, is great in that area as well. And then you got Bentley, who's taken on blockers, and you got the rotation of guys next to him, whether it's Phillips or Duggar in their sub packages, or you'll get McMillan, Wilson, or Tavai in some of their more nickel or some of their base groupings. And then when you got a hammer like Bentley, those guys can race to the football and kind of be athletes. So if the Bills do want to commit to the ground game, which I don't think they'll do, they ran against the Patriots very well in both their games and never stuck to it, which I was not going to say grateful for because they also passed pretty well. But I mean, they can run. They were able to run the ball last year. I don't think it's going to be quite as easy. And I do think if they do want to commit to that sort of thing, you're going to see more shotgun. And especially, I know the Bills aren't running Allen a ton after his injury. From what I've seen, it's been more in like critical situations where they just really need a play. Because I'm telling you, that QB counter would be scaring the crap out of me if he were at full strength, because they like to dial that up when they know they're going to be in man coverage. And New England hasn't shown they have any. I don't know if anybody's shown that they have answers for design Josh Allen runs, quite frankly. So that'll definitely be interesting. And then kind of rewind real quick. I maybe should have started with this. But with the cover zero stuff, it'll be interesting to see if the Patriots actually lean on it, because there was like with the Flores years and then a couple years after, that was when you were seeing, the Patriots are using cover zero at the highest rate in the league. Yeah. And then it was like the Pats and the Dolphins were neck and neck. But then you started seeing them actually get burned because teams were expecting it. So it was the same thing where they'd either keep extra people in the block and just hit the in-breakers that were right over those the grain defenders where they step up and then they drop back, because those are supposed to take away the slants, but then guys are hitting posts instead. And you got no one on the back end and you're just praying that the defensive back makes a tackle. This season, they've been much more coverage based. So we're seeing like cover 3 on early downs as their base. That's what they kind of want to run, so they can always have that numbers advantage in the box. Against Josh Allen, against guys who have really good play action attacks, you'll see more cover 2 on early downs, which they did last year as well. And that was a really good way for them to keep Josh Allen just taking what they gave him. He only, I think, had 2 explosive passes when they played cover 2 last year. One was that ridiculous hole shot in the wild card game that was just one of those Josh Allen plays where it's like, all right.
You just tip your cap. You're like, okay, it is what it is.
Exactly. Just get off the field, try to score some points and keep him off the field for a while. And then there was one where he got outside the pocket and threw it against his body, where it's, again, Josh Allen play, try to keep him in the pocket, but you're not going to beat him all the time. So I think what we're going to see a lot of is that cover 3. When they really want to make a stop, you're going to see more cover 1, I think, later in the game, which is really what they mostly do in passing situations. But if it's a first down and they're expecting play action, that's when you'll start to see them use it as well. But I'm expecting a lot more cover 2 than we usually see from them. Hopefully cover 6, because I know like that's really been taking the teeth out of the Bills offense when they see cover 4, because Allen's like, I'm not going to try to like hit a double post or something. I'm just going to hit Diggs on a stick route, let him work his magic after the catch. Not that I don't think they can attack cover 4 more aggressively than they have.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that's a good way on early downs. Just be like, all right, let him get it out, rally tackle. Patriots are the best tackling team in the league. So I definitely think those two high structures and playing more conservative coverage style approach is what we're going to see. But it's very possible that in longer yardage situations, when they know that passes come in third down, things like that, we could see more cover 0. But again, I'll be interested to see how often they actually try to use that and attack their line of scrimmage with just numbers.
That's a huge piece for me as well, especially coming off of the Vikings tape for the Patriots. Granted, it's a different offense because, well, it's a different offense as a whole, but the idea of what the Vikings can do to you, you have Justin Jefferson, you've got Thielen, you've got Hawkinson now. Still can't believe Detroit traded him, let alone in the division. But then you've also got that running game. Like, you've got Cook and you've got Madison. Like, you've got a legitimate, like, threatening running game piece. With how the Patriots played Minnesota and how they went about, guarding Justin Jefferson and playing that run game, do you think that they focused in that game more about taking Dalvin Cook away and being like, okay, hey, let's make Kirk Cousins have to beat us. Let's make him make lower percentage throws, which he did at times. He had a couple really great dimes to Justin Jefferson in the middle of the field and on the outsides. Or, you mentioned that piece of how strong the Pats have been against under center runs this year. Or do you think that was just something that came naturally to them and they were just able to naturally stop what the Vikings did? And I asked that because, again, in this game, like, the first thing you let off with what Belichick tries to take away is Josh Allen and or Stephon Diggs, which we've seen in years prior. Belichick has bracketed Stephon Diggs. He's also bracketed Cole Beasley. Beasley's gone. I still expect to see the bracket on Diggs. And then you got whatever they're going to try to do to get Allen. But unlike what happened against Minnesota, the Bills don't have that running threat in my mind to the Patriots to make them have to be like, well, we also have to account for the run. Do you think that was the Pats' primary focus in that game, stopping Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota run game, or did it just happen naturally because of how good they've been against the under center run this year?
Yeah, I definitely think their knowledge that they have been good against the run freed them up to focus more on Jefferson, because when they were in their 5 down fronts, that was when you'd see kind of the cover 2. So it's like you can see from the covers they're playing, they clearly are trying to stop pass, but they got the 5 down linemen. So it's like, all right, we're going to have numbers. We'll at least be better suited to stop the run. And then when they went to their 4 down fronts, that's when you'd see more cover 3 so that you could still have that extra person in the box to make sure that Dalvin Cook didn't just have a light box that he could run right down. So I didn't think the game plan was really tailored toward Cook. And I think, again, that's because they were confident in their front.
Okay.
What you did see with Jefferson was you saw a cover 1 double, which they very rarely use, but they don't use it a ton either. It's more of a situational thing. So brackets you'll see more in the red zone. Sometimes if there's a 2x2 look with 2 really big slot threats, they may check to it, but you're really not going to see combo coverages with like man structures more than a couple times a game outside of the red zone. Like the cover 1 double, they used it one time, and I think it looked like Devin McCourty was inside the bracket, and then you had Jonathan Jones outside.
Is this the Jones interception when he passed off?
No, this was the bomb that Jefferson caught right between when he ran right past him. Yeah, because it looked like McCourty, he was kind of a flat foot read, so I think he was expecting a crossing route, and then John Jones was standing underneath for a corner. But one thing I noticed, which was frustrating for me, was I was like, when he is in the slot on 3rd down, it is either a slot fade, seam, or a corner. Like it's not really a lot of crossers when he's in the slot in those situations. So yeah, I think McCourty was anticipating a crosser and he just ran right by him. So that was the one snap they used cover 1 double the entire game. And then there were a couple brackets later on. So I think the most attention they'll pay to Diggs, like I said, is maybe a little extra attention in the red zone. One thing I actually mentioned when I was previewing this game online on Twitter was that what the Bills kept spamming against them last season, they scored on this in every single game, was they would either go spread or they'd have a 3-by-1, knowing that Devin McCourty would favor the side with the most receivers or the 3 receiver side, whichever. And then they'd have somebody run either a skinny post or some type of in-breaker to the opposite side. And with Allen's accuracy, he would just throw freaking lasers right on guys. And I think that was like 4 or 5 of the touchdowns that the Bills scored on them last season. You know what I mean? So there's definitely going to be some times where they're just trying to take away the middle. But again, going back to Diggs, so maybe brackets, they'll try to hit him, I think, when they're in zone coverages. Diggs if they have any opportunity to kind of disrupt the timing of that. But of course, Diggs is also a very physical receiver, so there's no guarantee that's going to work. But yeah, with the Jefferson, you definitely saw them paying more attention to him. You got to with Diggs because he's weapon 1A, B, and C for the Bills. There's Gabe Davis, who can also obviously rip off crazy plays when he runs vertically down the field every once in a while. Dawson Knox is another reliable guy, especially when Allen's going off script. But you got to focus on Stephon Diggs. And obviously, again, Josh Allen's legs. Those are the biggest priorities.
Leaning into some of those coverage pieces. So last year, and these numbers were pretty intense when I went back and looked at them. So the Pats on the year, 57% single high shells pre-snap, third most, 65% middle of the field close coverage post-snap, second most, 35% man coverage, fifth most. Those numbers pretty much carried into their Week 16 matchup in Foxboro. 56% one high shell, 39% man coverage, 55% middle of the field close. So 10% less single high coverages post-snap, but pretty much the same one high shell looks in terms of percentage and roughly the same amount of man coverage. In the playoff game, that changed drastically. They went from, so again, that Week 16 game, 56% one high shells. In the playoffs, 41%. In that Week 16 game, 39% man coverage. In the playoff game, 18%. In the Week 16 matchup, 55% middle of the field close coverages. In the playoff game, 46%. You also had a 5% increase in blitz rate. It seemed like what we really saw in that Week 16 game, a lot of single high coverages, also a lot of man coverage, but a lot of cover one, a lot of cover three, and just somehow Miles Bryant always being matched up against Isaiah McKenzie in some sort of deep crosser. And McKenzie, yeah, you're shaking your head. I feel bad. And McKenzie just gouging him over and over and over again. So then the Pats came into the playoff game and were like, we're reducing that. We're playing, again, the man coverage drop is nuts. On the year, they were at 35% man coverage. In that Week 16 game, they were in 39%. In that playoff game, 18% man coverage. 75% zone coverage. Their yearly average for zone was 53%. They almost changed a bit of their coverage identity on the back end, seemingly because, listen, we got burned on all these overs and all these crossers in the regular season. Let's switch things up a bit. They played way less man, more zone, gave more two high looks pre and post snap. Do you think any of that continues or plays into the hand a little bit in this game, especially knowing that the Bills' running threat isn't as strong as it was in that playoff game? What do you expect to see from a man zone usage rate and overall single high versus two high looks based on what happened last year?
I think it's going to look more like Week 16 because one very important factor in that playoff game, Jalen Mills was hurt and John Jones missed both games. So Miles Bryant getting killed on those crossers was mostly because Jonathan Jones wasn't active. And then when they went to the playoff game, they had Juwan Williams, who was a second round pick for them, never panned out, was not reliable. He was the one who the deep hole shot was scored on. I'm not going to give him crap for that because, again, that was a ridiculous play, and I don't think he even I don't even think he expected that ball. But yeah, you had Juwan Williams and Miles Bryant out there, and then obviously you had J.C. Jackson. But I don't think they trusted their backups to be able to hang with the Bills one-on-one. This season, Miles Bryant has still been one of the corners who's seen the most amount of snaps. That's really because they're playing a lot of that zone coverage, and he's a smart guy. He's physical. He's a good tackler most of the time. So they'll keep him in there. But when you see in a lot of passing situations, especially against teams that have more depth, I actually predicted this early in the season. I was very proud because Jack Jones, I loved when they drafted him. I thought he had a lot of really good skills that were going to end up translating pretty quickly, especially because I didn't think Miles Bryant was going to be able to hang for a team that loves to play man coverage the way they do. So I had a feeling that what they were going to do with Jack Jones was what they did with J.C. Jackson when he was younger, was on early downs, he would sometimes rotate in, but really he was more on the field for obvious pass situations. And then Jason McCourty and him would basically kind of swap out. And like you said, the rotation of the Patriots secondary this year has been mind-numbing. Even for me, knowing where all these pieces are, it's a lot to process. All right, Bryant's on the field, but Mills is on the field, but now Bryant's on the field. Now John Jones is on the field. How does that affect Jack Jones? So they have a lot of different combinations. Also because Mills and John Jones have been hurt a lot this season. But I think what you'll end up seeing at some point, if Miles Bryant is against Isaiah McKenzie in man coverage, it's not gonna go well. So you're gonna see Jalen Mills and Jack Jones on the outside. I think Jack Jones is gonna be the one following Stephon Diggs because he followed Justin Jefferson when John Jones bumped down in the slot. And then John Jones is gonna take Isaiah McKenzie, which I think that matchup you're not throwing Isaiah McKenzie when John Jones is on him, unless you have a play you really, really like. I think Jalen Mills can handle Gabriel Davis, and then it's going to be okay. How does Jack Jones match up against Stephon Diggs? And then I think they'll try to give him help as well. Like you saw Devin McCourty, whenever he would come down to kind of cut routes, whenever he wasn't playing deep, you'd see Kyle Duggar or Miles Bryant play the deep safety, and Devin McCourty would just have his eyes on Justin Jefferson waiting for crossers or in-breakers or anything like that.
Yeah,
but if Devin McCourty was deep, he'd also, and I'm not sure they'll do this against Diggs because I don't think they're afraid of Diggs vertically. It's more, you need to make sure that there's attention around him because he might beat your guy and you just want to be able to rally and tackle him quickly.
Yeah.
But then you'd also see Devin McCourty shade aggressively to Justin Jefferson's side, either pre-snap and then he'd drift back to the middle just to kind of give Cousins something to think about, or it'd start in the middle and then drift afterwards and kind of give Jack Jones a little bit more help. So I think we're going to still see that rotation, a lot of Miles Bryant in the slot, especially on early downs, more of a rotation outside with John Jones, Jalen Mills, and Jack Jones all getting involved. But in the gotta-have-it situations, I think, like I said, you're going to see Mills, Jack Jones on the outside, and John Jones on the inside.
That was literally going to be my next question. You nailed it like that, because what that corner rotation is going to look like. And again, just comparing it for this most recent game tape, and also you had like an alpha receiver in Justin Jefferson like you're going to have with Diggs. Every time John Jones was on the field, he was lined up on Jefferson's side. Now, if Jefferson went in motion, he didn't necessarily travel with him all the time, although he did it sometimes. And he would travel with him and it would be man, and then he would travel with him again, and then it would end up being zone, and it would confuse Kirk Cousins. It was beautiful coverage games that they were playing on the back end with that. But literally if Justin Jefferson was on the left, John Jones was there if he was in there. If Justin Jefferson was on the right, John Jones was there. If Justin Jefferson was in the slot, John Jones was in the slot over Justin Jefferson. So I love that you already like beat me to it, because I was wondering, I was like, okay, is John Jones is he going to be that same level of, coverage piece against Diggs? Wherever Diggs goes, John Jones is going to be there, not necessarily traveling with him, but whatever side he's on, is he there? Because I was surprised with especially how good he looked against Jefferson in some reps in the year he was having. Granted, Jack Jones is having a good year too, and Mills is no slouch. Like, yeah, you would see that rotation. Like, Jones would have a good series. In fact, the series where it ends on that third down where they're in cover 3, I believe. It's early in the game, and Jefferson runs that quick speed out, and Jones sits on it and jumps it and almost picks it off. It's a little behind Jefferson. And I was like, oh, good play. And then the next series, John Jones isn't in there for the series. It's Mills and it's Jack Jones. And I was like, what the hell did he? I was like, I don't remember him leaving the game. And I was like, oh, it's the rotation. Yeah. So that rotation piece, I think, is going to be super important. So I like that you mentioned that. Let's dive into the offense quickly before we send John your way. Mac Jones, Matt Patricia, first-year OC, all these pieces. Let's start with the overarching piece. What makes this Patriots offense tick when it's going right, when it looks good? What does it look like schematically? What do they want to do formationally, alignment-wise, concepts, run schemes, whatever it is? What do they want to hang their hat on? What do they want to be offensively in an ideal world?
So ideally, I'll start with the run game. They used to be a very heavy duo or man team. So they were just like down blocks, like we're just going to manhandle you. And then Damian Harris is going to be hurt in this game, but he and Ramondre Stevenson have amazing feet and vision inside. Like, they are two of the NFL's best runners inside the tackles. It's amazing how many big runs they rip off in such a condensed area. But really what they want to do is have success on inside zone. That's something they really barely used in seasons past, and that's been something that they kind of are starting to use more, I think, because they realized last year a lot of their best plays came when Stevenson or Harris would find a cutback lane and then just exploit the defense with that great vision, and then they both got crazy burst where Harris is a home run threat. Stevenson isn't quite a home run threat, but he'll run you over, he can juke guys, and he'll hit some pretty crazy triples.
I love Ramondre Stevenson so much.
Man. Yeah. And honestly, he is their offense. Like, especially, he's been a literal every down back, which scares me because he is so much of what they do. So yeah, when they're not running inside, what they do, especially against the Vikings, I'm sure you saw this, is he was a huge part of the passing game, because rather than that like annoying drop back game where they're just playing levels and dagger every single drop back, and Mac isn't getting time protection, he's forcing things because he's not used to the system being this downfield passing attack. And frankly, they don't have the players yet to sustain that consistently and just be like, hey, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay system and just chuck it up on go balls and call, two verticals and a crosser. Like, they can't do that.
We're doing the Bruce Arians offense. We're just going downfield nonstop.
Right. I was excited about it at first, but I was like, no, they do not have the horses
Yeah.
for this yet. But what you're seeing more is getting back to the quick passing game. So you're seeing a lot of like 4-man or 4-by-1 formations where you're kind of just getting Stevenson in these swing routes and you're getting guys blocking for him, a lot of slants, just things to get the ball to Max hand quickly. Largely because their offensive line is in shambles. Isaiah Wynn's hurt. David Andrews, I know he's trying to fight back, but he's got a pretty significant injury as well.
Yeah.
So Ferenc has been in there a lot. Trent Brown has been really inconsistent. He's elite when his head's on straight, but he's had a lot of mental mistakes that have really cost the Patriots significantly, especially on third downs. And then at right tackle, you got Yadni Kajust, who's super talented. They drafted him a few years back, but he's inexperienced. And he's got a lot of issues in pass protection where if you don't give him help, unless it's a rusher who has a pretty simple plan, he's going to struggle. The only consistent piece they've had is Mike Onwenu, who is a baller right now. He's been a brick wall. He's taken a lot of the one-on-one matchups inside against some of the better rushers while Cole Strange gets help on the left side. So I think that, inside, it's going to still be a problem, especially with the Buffalo Bills having such amazing depth on the defensive line. But I think you're going to see more just like, all right, quick passes. And then they're going to start leaning on the play action game, which was non-existent earlier in the year. Now that's kind of their mechanism of getting those chunk plays. And if they want to just get to the straight drop back, like the touchdown to Aguilar against the Vikings, where Mac threw it to him right down the seams, that's one where they, like the Bills, had a chip on each side where the running back and tight end are both on the wing, and they just helped the tackles, which they actually did a really good job of, because you'll see pretty often with chip blocks, sometimes guys will just try to wreck whoever the edge rusher is, and then you screw the tackle because they aren't ready to be that far inside, or you just completely mess up the chemistry, and then there's pressure. Hunter Henry and Ramondre Stevenson did a great job of either just getting in the way or just giving a shove and basically just handing that rusher off. So I think when the Patriots want to go downfield, you'll see more of those 5-man protection, but 2 chip blocks. Maybe Hunter Henry stays in for a little extra. Ramondre Stevenson's been great in blitz pickup as well.
Yes, that's the video that I came across of yours, and I was like, oh, I like this. You did I think over a minute long cut up of all the pass pro reps for Ramondre Stevenson, and it was just an even further thing. I already liked him, and Damian Harris is good too. Like it's must be good for the Patriots to have 2 sweet running backs, but Ramondre is just big-bodied, good feet, enough burst, enough long speed. He's got hands. He can pass pro. Like he is truly, like you said, like a third down back where it's not like, well, we really don't want him in pass pro. It's like, no, he can do everything in between the tackles, outside gap zone, whatever have you. Like he's rounding into a real, like overall, like legitimately solid skill set running back.
Dude, I don't know if you've heard Belichcik talk about him. He is in love with this kid. He compared him to James White in pass protection.
Wow,
just saying,
that's a huge compliment.
I think it was the first play where Stevenson comes from inside and then goes all the way around when he catches a looper once his assignment drops.
Yes.
That was the one I think that Belichick was like, that's James
because
White.
That awareness is
White.
Fantastic. Like the fact that he's able to scan and process and then like on the fly pick that up, like that's you. Pass protection is a dying art for running backs, especially younger running backs. Like they don't get college running backs don't get a ton of pass pro reps. Like very rarely do you see good pass protecting running backs coming out of college. And the fact that Stevenson's already picking it up this early, like that was next level pickup. And then what also helps is he's huge. He's got the frame and the body to stand up to second level guys, but even some like first level dudes, like he can pick up somebody from the inside or the outside on the D line. And you're like, well, he's also big, so he can handle his own.
Yeah, you saw him a bunch of times against the Vikings. Somebody would lose, and he gives just enough help to give Mac time to either make the throw or try to find another read. And it didn't always work, but it wasn't Stevenson's fault. He was really doing a lot of dirty work in the trenches. So when you talk about an all-around, well-rounded back, like that's what you're talking about. He's been. And then on plays like 3rd and long, there was a 3rd and 16, I think it was against the Jets, where they dump it off to him. And there was a part of me that was like, I really do think he's going to get pretty close, at least give them like a decent decision on 4th down. He broke like 3 or 4 tackles and picked up 16 yards on 3rd down. It was insane. So he's so much of their offense. The other part has been Jacoby Myers. He's kind of been hurt, which has impacted his effectiveness, but he's still their guy in the middle. He's the one running all the crossers, making all the tough grabs a lot of the time. I do think some of his versatility that he showed last year, where you were seeing him go on a lot of slot fades and make more plays downfield on more than just those crossing routes. They haven't done that as much with him this season, but I also think the offense is struggling so much I think they know what they want to be now, but in terms of kind of being creative and building on things, they're trying, and you see them put in little wrinkles where it's like, okay, they have an awareness of, trying to develop and build on what they're doing, but they're still, it's not like, and this is obviously very lofty, but it's not like a Shanahan system where it's every single play has something that's built off of it. And if you're aggressive against it, you're going to get screwed 2 plays later or the next drive because they're going to remember it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the element that's missing. You saw it when they played the Colts and the Jets, where Mosley and Shaq, oh my God, I'm thinking Shaq Lawson's in my brain. Shaq Leonard, copy. Where they were calling out the Patriots runs. I found all the plays where they did it, and you could see that it was they would see the formation and immediately know what was coming. And the Patriots don't have a lot of plays where they kind of play off of it. Now, to that point, you saw off the bye week where both those teams started to notice the Patriots really like crack toss when you see a condensed receiver in the tight end in a 2-point stance. Then the Patriots started using those looks in the short motion where usually it triggers for the defense. They're running toss, and they started using it on play action. So they're taking baby steps. But again, you have a first-year offensive coordinator. Everybody's still trying to figure out where they fit into this whole, pie situation. So it's annoying to try to figure out because, like I said, there's shades of it, but at the same time, it is a pretty simplistic offense right now, where it just comes down to execution for these guys. Like, so they can have at least the reps and they know that they can do certain things well consistently. And then it's okay, how can we build off that later? So it'll be interesting to see how much more, for lack of a better word, complicated their scheme is going to be against the Bills, because against the Vikings off a bye week or on a short week, you're kind of going to all your core plays. It's the things that you can hang your hat on. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see, but a lot of it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson, screens, quick throws, getting him in those 3-by-1 looks where he can get a one-on-one matchup on the backside against the linebacker and make some magic. And then Jacoby Myers over the middle kind of doing his thing. Hopefully a couple shots of Devontae Parker, because he's been outstanding. When they throw him a catchable ball, he's been killing it.
Devontae Parker is this like 30, 40 yard like per catch guy where he just gets downfield and Mac Jones just drops a dime to him. And what's funny with that matchup is, back in his time in Miami, I don't know why. Well, I do. I mean, it's because of his skill set and size. He gave the Bills problems. Even when the Bills were killing Miami, Parker would eat, specifically against Tre'Davious White. And I think it's because of the size difference and the length. Parker he would use that frame. He was able to box out guys and just consistently beat the Bills individually. And now, he's working downfield. They've got some pieces there, but obviously, like you said, like I love the focus on Ramondre Stevenson. The one that keeps sticking out in my brain, I think it's against the Jets. It was like a 3rd and 18, something really 3rd and long. And Mac just dumps it down to Ramondre, and he literally breaks like 4 tackles. Like he breaks.
I think that's the one. I think that's the same one we were talking about. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
and he he's going through everybody. In my mind at first, I was like, was it against the Browns? And I was like, no, because the Pats were wearing blue, so it was the Jets game. And he just keeps breaking through and just breaking through and just breaking through everything. And I was like, oh my God. And then at first I was like, that's bad tackling. And then I rewatched it. I was like, oh, it's really not. It's just that Ramondre Stevenson's like a mini tank. And
huge, man.
I love how they've switched. I love what you called out the run game piece, because the Pats were one of the few teams that leaned into more gap scheme and man scheme last year in this whole zone world built off the Shanahans, going back to Mike and then what Kyle continued, and everybody's running zone and pairing it with boots and crossers and all this stuff. And then some teams like the Ravens, who are a unicorn and shouldn't really count, and then the Patriots were leaning more gap. And last year they had a gap run rate of 51% on the year, which was the most in the league. So 51% gap, 43% zone. And then you come into this year, 35% gap, 63% zone, a massive shift. Yeah. Now, one last question for you, and then we'll get you on your way. The Bills have struggled more against gap runs than they have zone runs. They're a traditional one gap penetrating front. They are aggressive. They like to come off the ball. They've done a bit more gap and a half this year, but still in their core, in their heart of hearts, they're one gapping penetrating front. They can get beat on traps and whams. Like if you want to run crunch like the Colts do, that can work. But even if you're just going traditional pin and pulls or powers or whatever you want to do, they can get out leveraged, especially on the inside, because they want to get upfield so fast and they can take themselves out of the play. Do you think the Pats, because they do have that gap percentage in their bag, and even this year, again, they're running 35% gap, which is down from 51 last year, but it's still the 11th most in the league this year. Do you think they turn that dial up a bit more against this Bills defense, who has been better against zone than they have against gap?
I'm sure they will. Last year, most of their explosive runs came because they pull someone, and especially with Damian Harris, like whether it was Milano or Edmonds,
Oh, the
they
big, the
would
big
chase
touchdown
that
run.
puller. Exactly.
They,
And literally,
they both did, Milano and Edmonds, and Hyde even a little bit. They all overcommitted
yeah.
a little bit to the boundary, and Harris was like, okay, and he just cut back inside, shot through, and was untouched.
And it worked in every single game. I think when they did it again in week 16, I think they exclusively ran power to create cutbacks, which you don't really see very often. Usually it's just straight ahead, like the point of
But it's
attack is
smart
right
because
behind
the Bills are such a fast flowing defense that they're going to try and get over the top on this, and we're just going to keep gashing them. It was almost like they ran power like it was outside zone, designed to like cut it back, or wide zone. Like it's wild.
Exactly. Like when you'd see Harris, he really was not trying to get outside. He would just kind of hold for a second and then pop backside, where it was like he had no intention of going front
Dude, he
side
was
on
like
that
friggin'
play.
like pressing the outside just to be like skirt and then go back and just gash and
Exactly.
cut and gash and cut.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to see a lot more zone. Again, most of their, or a lot more gap, because most of their zone scheme, like I said, is the inside zone. They're not running a ton of outside zone.
Right.
Mostly it just doesn't fit their scheme super well. You got Trent Brown, you got Mike Onwenu. They're just bigger guys who you don't want consistently on the move blocking. You want them downhill punishing guys.
I was going to say,
and
so even when they
inside
are
zone
going
gives
zone,
you the option.
exactly, you're still going
Right.
downhill. You're still mashing dudes and mashing buttons against
The,
guys.
the way I think of it is they just ran inside zone, so it's just a complement to the duo that they ran last year, just so they can get a little easier running lanes for their backs and cutback lanes instead of just having them literally just downhill into the teeth of the defense. Now they'll use duo more as a way to get everybody to condense inside and then bounce, which I think we'll also see.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we're definitely going to see a lot of gap scheme because the Patriots never went away from it. They still use a heavy dose of like trap. You don't see as much wham as they ran last year, but I'm sure they will with, guys like Ed Oliver who love to get upfield. We saw it last year. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of pullers in the run game this time around.
That's very fair. Actually, one quick question from the chat, because I saw this and I like scheme related questions from the chat. When you talked about Onwenu, so Pete comes in and says, are the Patriots using a sixth offensive lineman as much now that Onwenu is part of the main five guys up front?
So they were when Marcus Cannon was healthy. I think he's on IR right now. Either way, he's not going to be available for this game. So we haven't seen a lot of six offensive line formations, but when he was in, you were seeing him a lot. Like there was a huge uptick, especially once Cannon went in for Isaiah Wynn when he was underperforming. Then it became Isaiah Wynn was the extra tackle, and you started seeing a little bit more of that rotation. But now, if they want to run the ball, it's going to be a lot more two tight end sets. Sometimes with Jonnu acting as a pseudo fullback, motioning into the backfield. A lot of Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith next to each other to kind of combo and get up to the second level, which is where they had a few good runs a couple weeks ago. So yeah, not a lot of 6-0 line stuff, but I think you will see more 12 personnel when they're trying to run the rock, or 11 if they want to get the Bills and more of their even fronts and less of those 5-man surfaces like 4-3 under kind of looks.
Okay. Very fair. Taylor, you were all right in this episode, I guess.
I'll take all right.
No, you were phenomenal. You had a bunch of good positive comments coming into the chat as well. I honestly, when we talked about it before, like how long we were going to go and if we're rolling, like whatever, I literally looked up and saw the clock and was like, we'll get him out of here. Yeah. This was just really, I'm going to keep powering on this episode, but I'm going to let you, go do your thing. But again, I appreciate the hell out of you for one, stopping by, two, just knowing as much as you do and being able to, talk ball with me for a little bit in this important matchup. And yeah, you crushed it as I had hoped for and as I anticipated. And just one more time, in case some people come in later, tell them who you are, what you do, all the things you like to hit on, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you, man, so much for inviting me. Had a great time. Thank you for answering my questions.
Yeah.
Once again, Taylor Kyles. You can find me on Twitter at TKYLES39, 39 for Woodhead. And you can see some of my work at SB Nation's Pat's Pulpit.
Awesome. Taylor, again, you were phenomenal. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend. And I have a weird feeling that I'll probably be seeing you around on this show again at some point, because maybe the Bills might have another game with the Patriots this year, and then maybe we'll see what happens.
I think so. I'd be honored. Thank you again, brother. Have a great night and enjoy the game yourself.
Yeah, I'm super nervous and paranoid all the time, so fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. I grew up as a Bills fan, obviously, and as a Red Sox fan. So
Oh,
even though the Sox have like 4 rings in my lifetime, I still know nothing but the rug being pulled out from under me. I'm secure in nothing. Between 13 seconds and Grady Little leaving in Pedro Martinez, I know nothing but heartbreak and misery. Like, so I am secure in nothing. I'm nervous, but I'm excited. But yeah, you two enjoy the game as well. Again, you crushed it, and Godspeed. Enjoy your night.
thank you, brother. Good luck with the rest of the show.
Thanks, man. Absolutely tremendous guest, Mr. Taylor Kyles. I'm not a huge social media guy. I use it for the podcast, obviously, but I'm not a huge user of social media. I'm genuinely thankful for Twitter for bringing his work to my eyes and ears. Again, he grinds tape, breaks down tape. Again, he works as an NFL researcher, so dude knows what he's talking about, knows coverages, knows ball. And we dove into a lot, got a bit sidetracked because we went into the weeds a little bit. But yeah, man, I was very happy that he was able to come on. And I thank you for all of you for showing the kindness to Taylor and being very hospitable, as you folks normally are. Like Taylor said, and like I said, we're going to continue powering through on the back end of Disguise coverage. What we're going to do on here, we're going to look at some specific film aspects for the Bills offense and the Patriots defense. Some of it tying into what we talked about earlier in this episode, which was how the Bills are protecting from an empty perspective against teams that are trying to show pressure when they come into empty. Taylor already alluded to it with what the Pats have done with cover zero in terms of trying to heat quarterbacks up. And we saw Detroit be successful with it. I think that's something that the Patriots are going to try and emulate if the Bills go into empty. We're going to talk some stats. We're going to talk a bunch of little pieces on the back end of this episode. So please, 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 please stick around as we continue to ride here on Disguise coverage. Before we dive into that, I'm going to drop the love for the sponsor. You folks know it. So I never get this right. I'm awful at it. One Pie Pizza. You see the logo in the top upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can find the online menu in the episode show notes here on YouTube or any one of the podcasting apps and platforms. Sincerely, they are the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Hands down. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, delicious cheese to sauce ratio, or a perfect cheese to sauce ratio, I should say. It's not sliding off the pie. It's not too saucy. They make their own homemade blue cheese. They also have a bunch of initiatives and drives for the community. It's November now, so they're doing Toys for Tots. So drop off a toy when you pick up your pie. If you drop off a toy, you also get your name entered into a raffle for awesome, fun Buffalo Bills and Sabres prizes. A lot of Buffalo action going on there. They are genuinely like a really strong member of this community in terms of doing good for the community with all the drives and initiatives they're part of. Not to mention they supply Buffalo with the best pizza in Buffalo. So go get yourself some of One Pie Pizza. Again, the online menu can be found in the episode show notes, address, all that kind of stuff. Also, go check out the Disguise coverage. Alan Goat. Red onion, some bacon, chicken, some goat cheese, some mozzarella. Oh, fantastic pie. Go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Do yourself and your family and the community some good. Now, let's move forward. Oh, real quick. Pop says 2 trees. Yes. I keep the little tree out all year round and I change the garland every month. You folks know this. But come Christmas time, the little tree goes over there. We bring out the big guy with the red ornaments, some other colored ornaments, and the red garland with the frost action. So yeah, little tree stays up all year round, as evidenced right there. Put some Christmas garland on it with a little faux bulb action on the garland. And then we got the big tree over here. Now, let's continue diving into this matchup between the Bills and Patriots. And like I said, there's several pieces that are concerning about I don't want to say the Bills offense from a holistic perspective, but some aspects. And as we pull up some graphics here, I want to dive into some pieces. So again, like I talked about, what we've seen from the Bills offense has been up and down as of late. I don't think it's holistically any one person's fault. I don't think it's holistically any one scheme issue. I don't think it's all on Dorsey. I don't think it's all on Allen. I think it's a bit, as there is in everything with football. There's so many variables, so many moving parts. Very rarely is one problem ever just solely on one person or solely on one thing. You don't really see that in terms of, again, you can't focus on one person. You can't focus on one aspect of a team with how many moving parts and how many pieces there are. But nonetheless, we're going to dive into some of the issues that we've seen for the Buffalo Bills. And the first one I want to highlight are some of the red zone issues that we've seen from the Buffalo Bills. And it's wild when you look at some of them. So I'm going to pull up this graphic right now of some of Josh Allen's red zone metrics for the 2022 season. So you see it right there on your screen. I felt like I wanted to put these up there so it's easier to see for everyone instead of me just reading them. So you're looking at red zone metrics, right? So of the 37 quarterbacks with at least 10 attempts in the red zone this year, Josh Allen is 37th in EPA, so last. He's 31st in completion percentage, 36th in rating, and he has the most interceptions with 5. If you're looking at the Bills offense as a whole in the red zone, they're 28th in DVOA, 28th also in the pass, and 25th on the ground. Non-red zone DVA overall on the offense, they're 6th, 3rd in the pass, 17th on the ground. You are seeing, and this isn't news to anyone, you're seeing significant struggles for the Buffalo Bills in the red zone. You saw it earlier in the year, but we've really seen it started to rear its ugly head throughout these last several games, really starting since coming out of the bye with some of the issues against Green Bay. And I think it's a combination of things. We'll start with the Ken Dorsey piece. I think he is lacking some creativity. Now, whether you're a conspiracy theorist and you're in the mind of he's saving it all for the playoffs or the end of the year and he doesn't want to show anybody what he's really got cooking up, cool, fine, more power to you. But at the end of the day, there's a lack of creativity in the red zone. There's also some questionable usages, especially earlier in the year. We saw Dawson Knox staying in and being more of a blocker. We saw 3-man or 2-man route combinations or people staying into block who would be better served getting out into the route distribution. We saw a lack of mismatch potential being created and or utilized from a schematic perspective. Then you add in some of Josh's decision-making pre-elbow injury. He's had some questionable decisions and throws when it's come to his red zone performance this year. Again, having the most interceptions in the red zone with 5. Trevor Lawrence is second with 3. You can make the connection of, well, it starts from the top down. The play design and play call isn't great. Then it sets Allen up for failure. And that is very understandable. But at the end of the day, he is still the one executing. Players still need to make the plays. He hasn't been his best in the red zone. And even to further that piece for the red zone action, Josh Allen, when you look at the EPA aspect of where he is, so 37th in EPA in the red zone. Non-red zone, he's 3rd. That is a massive jump and drop depending on what end you're looking at it. He goes from 37th to 3rd when you're not factoring in the red zone in terms of EPA. When you do, he goes to last out of QBs with at least 10 red zone attempts. That is a huge drop for him individually, but also obviously for this team. You got to maximize points, especially as you start to play some of the bigger and better teams in the AFC and in the NFL as a whole. When you get down to the red zone, at the very least, you need to come away with 3. They're not even coming away with 3 sometimes because of how much they're turning the ball over. But then you add in those other efficiencies. It's something that I think can start to get fleshed out if they can run the ball better and if they can have some more designers in the red zone. I also think if Allen starts to get healthier and they start to run him a bit more, that adds another chess piece. Josh Allen has been the best red zone factor for the Buffalo Bills with his legs and his arm, and with his legs from both a scrambling perspective and a designed run perspective. So if they can start to get back to some of that, there may be some, positive things on the horizon coming for the Buffalo Bills, but it's been a piece that is concerning to say the least. Another graphic I wanted to show here, because this is going to tie into the film that I'm about to show in just a smidge here. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here as I narrate for you in terms of what we are doing. So wanted to highlight what the Patriots did last year versus the Buffalo Bills and how it ties into what they will do this year. So like I talked about with Taylor, and like Taylor mentioned, what you've got with the Patriots defense traditionally last year and this year as well, they want to live in a single high world. They're changing a bit and they're adapting a bit, but this is a team that will show single high safety pre-snap. They will show single high safety post-snap. They are still towards the top of the league in man coverage rate, a little lower than last year, but this is a team that likes to live in cover 1, cover 3. They'll do some varying things out of those looks. But like Taylor said, especially on early downs with cover 3 being kind of like their early down base coverage package that they like to run on the back end. This is a team that will show a lot of single high pre-snap, a lot of single high post-snap, and then combine that with man coverage. And that ties into what we've seen from the Patriots traditionally. And last year, again, so I have 3 different columns here for you guys. What the Pats defense was overall last year, what they did in week 16 versus the Bills, and what they did in the playoffs versus the Buffalo Bills. Because there's some stark differences. But if you look at the overall column and the week 16 column, they're very similar. Similar numbers for one high shells. Again, that one high shell means a single high safety, post safety, middle of the field, pre-snap. Similar numbers there. Similar numbers in man coverage. They tweaked up their man coverage numbers in week 16. Similar zone numbers, a little less. So MOFC, that means middle of the field covered. That's shorthand for single high coverage after the snap. So MOFC, middle of the field covered coverages are your cover 1s and your cover 3s, the ones where you have that single high safety. MOFO is middle of the field open. MOFO, those are your 2 high safety looks. So your cover 4, your cover 2, your cover 6. So 10 percentage point drop in terms of those middle of the field covered looks, but similar in terms of like box rate, 7-man box rate, stack box rate, and blitz percentage, right? But that week 16 game, that was the pivotal one. The Bills won that game in Foxboro. Josh Allen had a terrific game, and we saw the Patriots using a lot of single high coverage and a lot of man coverage. Again, 39% man coverage rate, so basically 41 out of every 4 snaps, they were playing man coverage. We saw 55% middle of the field coverage usage, which was the 8th most for that week. But again, so over half, they got the single high safety looks. And it's the game that made everybody think Isaiah McKenzie could replace Cole Beasley and that Isaiah McKenzie was being held back. All you saw were the deep overs time and time again from Isaiah McKenzie just beating Miles Bryant in a variety of ways, like Taylor and I talked about. You go into the playoff game. The Patriots changed all of that dramatically and drastically. Look at the difference in one high shell rate in that playoff game, 41%, much lower than what it was in week 16, much lower than what it was on their yearly average. You look at their man coverage rates, 18%, much less than week 16, much less than what they did overall in the year. The zone number, like I talked about earlier, is crazy. 75% zone usage rate, a huge jump from the 51% and 53% in week 16 and overall, respectively. They also used more light boxes. You saw a 6 percentage point increase versus week 16, and you saw a 5% increase in blitz rate in that playoff game. The Patriots tried to tweak some things, right? They went with more 2 high shells. They went with more zone coverage. They went with more 2 high coverages post snap. And then again, what you saw, the Bills, that worked into their game plan because the Bills turned the dial up on their gap run scheme that they found at the end of the year, and they ran Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary had a strong game in that game, 86 yards, a couple touchdowns, one of roughly 20 yards, that nice one that he broke off where Gilliam pulled and let him on a counter. The Bills were physical up front. They used more Gilliam. They used more Singletary. They were successful in the ground game. Allen only had to throw the ball 25 times in the playoffs versus 47 times in that week 16 win. The Bills need to be multiple in general, but especially against this Patriots defense as the Pats try to poke and prod. But this was a very good indicator of how much the Patriots were willing to tweak and adapt. Granted, it was the playoffs and it's win or go home, but the Patriots legitimately changed and broke tendencies in order to counteract what the Bills did to them in week 16. So very interesting parts to mention there. Now, let's dive into some film, shall we? We shall. So this is some film from the Bills game against the Detroit Lions. The first one, they were going to show us the touchdown to Isaiah McKenzie. And I'm showing this because it ties into 2 pieces that I think we could see against the New England Patriots. So if you'll notice on this play, Stephon Diggs, he's lined up in the slot. He's going to go in motion. You see number 23 goes in motion with him. It's indicating man coverage. Doesn't mean it's always going to be man coverage when the corner travels with the motion man. But in this instance, it is man coverage. And it's a good indicator. On the snap, watch this safety right here. On the snap, he comes down, he brackets Stephon Diggs, right? So what does that mean? There is now nobody in this spot. So effectively, this is a single high coverage with the safety over here, okay? And what does that mean for Mr. Isaiah McKenzie? Let's backtrack a little bit and go back to the snap here as we start to show Diggs in motion. Here's McKenzie lined up in the slot. We see him right here. Now that safety on that far side, who could be a potential hindrance for this deep over, brackets and comes down on Diggs. Isaiah McKenzie is wide open for this touchdown on this deep over. These deep overs against these what it effectively comes out to a single high look for the Lions here. This is what the Bills feasted on last year against the New England Patriots. You're going to watch number 5, Deshaun Elliott, watch him come down and bracket on Diggs, which means, again, there's no safety on that spot. Allen looks, and also Allen sells it. He looks, he watches this down, he gets the commitment from the safety, his eyes immediately turn, and there's just tons of separation. Also a nice job in the pocket of not getting hit on his arm. These are looks that the Patriots have shown traditionally throughout the years with who they've been. Again, they're playing more, a little more too high this year and changing their percentages and their tendencies a little bit. They showed some more too high looks against the Vikings, but who they've been, by and like largely has been a single high coverage team, both in terms of cover 3 and in terms of cover 1. This is the look you could see from the Patriots this week. Just getting that single high coverage, man, bracketing Stephon Diggs and making themselves vulnerable to the deep over from someone like Isaiah McKenzie, who crushed them definitively last year in New England. Now, I'm going to go to another piece. This one is not so positive. So we talked about this with Taylor earlier, how the Lions attacked the Bills when the Bills went into empty. So you've got a cover 0 blitz. Again, something Taylor asked about and wanted to bring up because of the Patriots' ability to use that. They have it in the bag. They have it in their back pocket, and the Bills have struggled with it at times this year, but specifically against Detroit. So you see what Detroit is doing on the line. They've got 7 showing pressure here, and let it run here in real time. And you see what happens. Let's go in slow-mo. Simulated pressure. Everybody acts like they're going to rush. You got everybody crowding up the line, and then defenders drop out. So effectively, all they do is actually rush 4. So they're showing 7, but they only rush 4. And look at the havoc that it causes. Basically creates a free runner and Kirby Joseph off the edge. Dawkins gets a piece of him, but Joseph right here is basically a free runner coming off the edge. Bears down right on Allen. But what Allen does, this is that throw I was talking about earlier. He just takes such a deep drop and then fires a beautiful missile to Isaiah McKenzie. So he beats the cover 0, right? They're able to gum it up enough. Allen can drop back. You get the completion. And that's the risk when you run cover 0, especially against someone in the slot like McKenzie. Like you have a 2-way go anytime you're in the slot. Not to mention, again, you're so far off. There's so much potential for McKenzie to go left or go right or even push vertical, whatever he wants to do. Watch McKenzie stem this inside a little bit. It's actually a good route from McKenzie. Stems it inside a little bit to give himself some more space, cuts it off, and then you have Allen making a ridiculous throw from super deep in the pocket. Show it from this angle. This is a nice little touch too, and this is something that New England will pick up on. Watch this man right here. Watch him on the snap. Fake the rush, and then drop back, and then rush. And then he kind of bows out a little bit because he sees the pressure go on Allen, so he can kind of contain a little bit if he needs to. Just create confusion, create advantageous rush angles. Detroit did this a lot in this game, and it worked, again, to their advantage. I would expect to see this from the Patriots if the Bills are going empty. This is also another example, too. You got the chip help here in Devin Singletary and Dawson Knox. What they're going to do is help on these edges. They're going to chip, try and delay them in their path to the quarterback, and then they're going to release out into the route distribution, ideally, and provide a check down or a little safety option release valve for Josh Allen. But what the Lions did a great job of is they would mug these guys up and then sometimes carry them into coverage. Again, varying it up a lot. But at the end of the day, Bills gum up the works enough and you get a completion to Isaiah McKenzie. So that's a win for the Bills. Success. Now, let's go to another. This is a sack for the Detroit Lions. So again, what do we got? We have the Bills in empty. Here's Devin Singletary as a chipper. Here's Dawson Knox as a chipper. So again, we have that 5-man offensive line, but effectively a 7-man surface because we've got the 2 chippers on either side of the tackles. McKenzie flashes on this route. He's open. Again, it's very similar to the touchdown we saw earlier, right? What did we see on that touchdown? We saw safety come down onto Stephon Diggs, and we saw McKenzie run that over. And because there's no safety here, it was a touchdown. That was the first play we showed, diving into stuff here. So let's watch. What do we get on this play? Here comes that far side safety into the boundary. He's reading Allen's eyes. He's functioning more as a hole player on this one, but it also allows him to kind of semi-bracket Stephon Diggs. McKenzie clears right behind him and is wide open. Not wide open, but he's open enough in NFL standards. Allen can't get to it because he's got pressure coming off the right edge, and he gets brought down. Again, we'll watch it in real time. Watch it drop. And Allen can't get to it. What's even more disappointing, and this is what I talked about earlier with Taylor, you've got chip help here. The chip help is ineffective. Singletary goes out, kind of tries to shoulder the outside shoulder and force the edge back inside, but the edge just gives him a quick arm over and keeps rolling through. Spencer Brown stops his feet, gets beaten around the edge, and you're done. But again, another look, right? Let's look at it from Allen's perspective. Allen calls for the offensive line to slide to the left because he sees all the rushers lined up over here. And this is just a slide call from him, and they'll man up on the guys on the outside on the right side of the offensive line. You'll watch Allen call it. Literally comes up to the line, points out, calls the slide. You see Van Roten and Spencer Brown communicate with one another. Now, 49 on the snap, he drops out. So effectively, this is just a chip on 59, and then Spencer Brown's supposed to finish him off. The other side, the loaded side, works out honestly pretty fine. But the issue that you have is you don't effectively chip 59, and then Spencer Brown loses. Now, that was a good rush. If it's Matthew Judon, he's a different kind of rusher, but I would feel like that's not a comfortable matchup you wanted for the Buffalo Bills. And we're going to go to another piece here. Again, what are we living in? Empty. This time, we see a pressure look. What's nice with this one is what Detroit does is they create these wide alignments, and then Anzalone's going to feign the rush, and that feigned rush puts Van Roten and Brown on islands in space. I wanted to show it from the sideline angle, but here's the nice piece. Look at the wide alignment. There is nobody covering the guards and the centers. Wide alignment, wide alignment, wide alignment, wide alignment, and then Anzalone to top it off on the edge. Again, showing a pressure look, 5-man look, who's blitzing, who's not. This time they kind of bring all 5. But watch the chip help. You got Singletary chipping. Doesn't really work out. You've got Knox chipping. Doesn't work out. We'll start with the Singletary side. So again, he's chipping on 59. This is his second sack of the game. Comes out, gets a decent enough piece, but gets through him. Quessenberry just does not have the feet and gets beat around the edge. We'll watch it from the sideline angle so you can get more of a full perspective. Here's Quessenberry. The Yankees beat. And then because Allen takes such a deep drop, if Allen's up more in the pocket, okay. But because Allen's deep in the pocket, this creates an easy arc for him to get around Quessenberry here, which is what happens. And Allen makes the first guy miss and then gets tracked down from the back. And that's part of what had been the struggles for the Bills offense this year. Like so much is relying on Josh Allen to just make all these plays, to read the coverage pre-snap and then adjust post-snap and then evade the rush and then create plays out of scripture and make the throw and be the runner and scramble and do design runs. Like so much is on his shoulders at all times, and it's tough. And this play is a good example of something like that. So again, we'll watch the chip help. Now so we looked at the chip help on the Singletary side. Okay. Now let's watch the chip help on this side with Dawson Knox. On the snap. So Anzalone is taking Knox man-to-man. So he rushes initially. Knox gets occupied, and then Anzalone just continues it. So he takes away that check down option. Knox is supposed to be a guy who can release out after chipping and then be an option for Josh Allen underneath on this 3rd and 7. He isn't. And then you're going to watch Kaminsky. Watch him attack and watch Hutchinson go around Knox and then loop back inside. And then Kaminsky continues, and they both basically get to Josh Allen. This is just not a simple game, but watch Kaminsky attack. He pushes right into Spencer Brown. Van Roten goes with him. Hutch cuts back inside, flushes Allen a bit. Allen gets away from Kaminsky, but he gets chased down from the back end. I don't want to downplay the quality of this design and the execution from the Detroit Lions, but this isn't an overly complicated, rush look, pressure look game up front. The Pats have a better front. holistically. When you're talking about Judon and Guy and Gottschall and Uche and even Anthony Jennings, like what they can do, this is blood in the water if they're the New England Patriots. Now, granted, Mitch Morse should be back for this game. He helps a ton with the communication up front in terms of setting everybody. Van Roten, who wasn't terrible in this game, but he also wasn't great. He'll be out. Bates will be in there. Left tackle is going to be an issue with Questenberry in there. I also think right tackle is still going to be an issue with the ebbs and flows, with a lot of, down play on the roller coaster that has been Spencer Brown this year. This is blood in the water. You saw Taylor's eyes light up earlier when we were talking about it, like when they have trouble reading games. And Allen just can't get to the looks downfield. It's a problem for the Buffalo Bills. So again, wanted to show those pieces because I think you're going to see some of those aspects from the Patriots this game. They on the year they've rushed for, and they've gotten home with it. I mean, again, it helps when you have an edge rusher in Matthew Judon, who's having an absolutely tremendous year by any stretch of the imagination, by any measurable aspect that you're looking at for the Patriots. So shout out to Judon for having a good year. But if the Pats want to bring those pressure looks whenever the Bills go empty, they can mug up those chippers like Detroit did. And then if the Bills are trying to get plays downfield and taking advantage of those cover zero looks with the lack of coverage help over the top, Allen hasn't been able to have the time to get there consistently. And you're going to have an offensive line that I think is at a disadvantage versus the Patriots front. I think if you're looking at Bills O-line versus Pats D-line, and again, the front as a whole, I'm including Bentley and that linebacking crew with how they blitz, with how they come forward, the length they have, the size that they have. I think they have the potential to gum up the short areas for Allen to work with, in addition to creating free runners with structured design or just straight up one-on-one execution and winning. If the Pats can get Judon one-on-one with Spencer Brown or Questenberry, which the odds of that happening are pretty decent, that's a win for the Pats. Like, that's a tall task for anyone, let alone with the inconsistency the Bills are seeing at tackle. And then you have the horses on the inside for them, the physicality, the angles they take, what they do up front. It can get scary at times for the Patriots. And with that being said, we're going to show some Minnesota Vikings versus New England Patriots film to see what we could be looking at from a Patriots perspective. This is a play that I talked about earlier when Taylor was here. So you got a too high shell pre-snap. Like I mentioned there, they're going to spin a safety down into cover 3. And this is just a really good play by John Jones. So John Jones is here. Justin Jefferson is in the backfield. Jefferson's going to motion out, and Jones is going to take him. But like I mentioned, everywhere Justin Jefferson lined up, Jonathan Jones was there. Now, if Jefferson went in motion, that didn't necessarily mean that Jones was going to go with him and carry him across the field. But if Justin Jefferson lined up on the left side, Jones lined up on the left side. If Justin Jefferson lined up on the right, Jones was there on the right. Then if Jefferson went in motion, he might follow, he might not. But either way, at the initial onset of breaking the huddle, Jones went wherever Justin Jefferson went. Now, they're already calling it out. Justin Jefferson got him. So you're seeing again, we got a too high look. That's a too high shell pre-snap. Kirk Cousins is going to snap the ball. We see McCourty is already kind of indicating a little bit. McCourty's going to spin down. Duggar's going to drop back into the post. We got a cover 3 look here. This is a good rep from John Jones on the outside. He's playing with outside leverage, watching Kirk Cousins while keeping Justin Jefferson in his peripherals. This is a bit of a behind throw from Kirk Cousins. He had to lead Jefferson more to the sidelines, but Jones is right there to make a play on the ball. I know Justin Jefferson, 9 catches, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, but he had a couple really good contested catches, also had a couple really good dimes from Cousins. Jones had a good game. He's a quality corner. So is Jack Jones on the other side. And then Mills as like the third option. I'm not as high on Jalen Mills as Taylor was or is, but I still think he's a quality guy as your third corner. He's the number 2 corner at the top of your screen here on this clip with Miles Bryant in the slot. But this is a good rep from John Jones, making him work for it, making him have to earn it on a third down. Hip transition, reads the play, smooth, jumps it, gets a break up, plays the scenario. Really good coverage. Now, let's look on this play. This is an interception for Jonathan Jones. This is the Patriots using their one-hole coverage as ID'd by Mr. Sean Syed from Syed Schemes, who I had on to preview the Bills-Vikings game. He dove into some of the game tape, and he and I were talking about what coverages the Pats used against Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, what they were trying to function with. So This coverage here is one hole. Basically, it means this safety to the trip side is going to drop down and basically help out and function is almost like a functional double team aspect to the passing strength, which in this case is the 3 receiver side for the Minnesota Vikings. But what's nice is on this play, so again, it's man coverage and it presents like man coverage. And again, here's Justin Jefferson, here's John Jones tied together once again. You'll watch on this snap, you're going to see Kyle Duggars right here. He's going to get hands on Justin Jefferson a little bit. And then you're going to see John Jones carry Jefferson up the field. Go in slow-mo here. Here comes Duggar. Boom. Gets a piece of Jefferson. Now there's Jones. Outside leverage, man coverage. Watch him carry him up the field and then effectively pass him off to Devin McCourty. Now, John Jones becomes that hole player. And what happens in this coverage? He sinks down. He settles. Kirk Cousins makes a bit of an errant throw. Goes over the top, and we have an interception for John Jones. This is a piece that the Patriots will use a lot. Again, that cover one hole, one double kind of aspect look. But this is, what it's been dubbed as. McCourty's going to take that pass off. He's a safety. And again, this could be either of their safeties, whatever safety is to that passing strength. What you could also see at times too is you could have the opposite where this safety will be the one to drop and he'll pick up something coming on the cross. But if you do it already to the passing strength side with the closest safety, you can kind of create like brackets and functional double teams, which is in essence what they do. Jones passes off Jefferson to McCourty and then drops as the hole player. But initially when he carries him upfield, it kind of functions like a bracket, which is ideally what you want against someone like Justin Jefferson. I would expect to see some of this coverage against Stephon Diggs as well. They bump him, which is good. And then again, he's bracketed right there. So if Cousins wants him, he's got a man on the inside. He's got a man on the outside. There's nowhere to go. But what's even better is, because it's going to look like bracket, and he's off it. He looks away. Jones leaves him. McCourty picks him up. Jones sinks. You get a bad throw. Interception. Nice coverage. Let's go to another piece. So this is Matthew Judon on the inside. An aspect for this Patriots team where, again, he'll get lined up everywhere. He'll get used everywhere. But the Bills interior, I don't know if it's better at pass protection at this point than on the outside, but this is just an example of Judon being an absolute horse. He did actually have a great game in this one. O'Neal did well. The O-line held up. Just an example of Judon being a monster and a horse. Also, this is like a ridiculous throw and catch from Cousins, like the fact that this throw and play even worked out. But watch Judon just take the angle, shoot the gap. And again, this is similar to what you're going to see. What we saw on that Lions tape, showing a pressure look up front. The Vikings aren't in complete empty here. They have they're just in shotgun with the back to the right. But this is a similar kind of pressure look, making the offensive line communicate, making Allen and or Morse ID. Where's the protection going? Who's taking who? What are we doing? Play into those games. And then you have the added bonus of dropping some of your guys out. Again, what do we see? Like the Lions did. This isn't unique to the Lions or unique to the Patriots. Simulated pressures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys on the line showing pressure. Only 4 are going to come. In this case, it's the 4 interior players. The 2 edges are going to drop. Looks that have given the Bills problems like we just showed against the Detroit Lions. Boom. Interior guys come. And the Vikings actually pick it up pretty well, aside from Ed Ingram against Judon, who just beats him inside and draws the hold. Cousins gets it off and actually makes, again, a pretty good throw, but the hold is there because of what Judon creates. I would expect to see these looks. I think they're going to test Judon everywhere. On the outside, both sides, right side, left side. I think they're going to try him out on the interior against Ryan Bates, probably see him lined up at head up over the center, but I think you'll see more of these alignments where he's lined up. Again, this is a third down where he's got the opportunity to attack on the interior and shoot a gap. And then you get the drop out on the outside. You see Jefferson getting checked. Watch this throw. Probably should have been picked off, but Cousins fits it into a tight window. Nonetheless, shout out to him on that play. Last one that I wanted to show here. So the Patriots are in cover 1. They get hit with overs from each side. And Devin McCourty the single high post safety, he has to choose. Not completely the same in terms of a coverage standpoint that we saw on the very first clip when I showed that Isaiah McKenzie touchdown, but this is similar to what we saw last year from the Patriots against the Buffalo Bills. These single high coverages, this time it's man, and all you're going to get is you're going to get an over from Thielen and you're going to get an over from Justin Jefferson. And there's some play action as well. This was a look that the Vikings tried to hit multiple times. Kirk Cousins talked about it. They finally got the coverage they want for it and were able to hit it. You'll get the play action. Second level defenders get sucked up. And this is where Devin McCourty has to choose. You have an over from Jefferson. You've got an over from Thielen, right? McCourty has to pick up. Is he going to stay here and carry Thielen, or is he going to cut off Justin Jefferson? I don't want to say the choice is easy because I feel like that's disrespectful to Adam Thielen, but McCourty jumps onto Jefferson, and there goes Thielen on the other side, wide open. Cousins actually gets to it a bit late, but Thielen's so open that it kind of works out anyway, regardless. Single high look, again, for the Patriots, who they are in their core. Single high, whether it's cover 3, whether it's cover 1, that's what they've been percentage-wise over the last couple of years. That's what they've been for the most part this year, although they have tweaked things based on matchup. If you get them in these looks, especially if they're going to give priority to Stephon Diggs like they do on this play with Justin Jefferson, that's going to create opportunities for whether it's Gabriel Davis, whether it's Isaiah McKenzie, whether it's Dawson Knox, whoever. It's going to create that opportunity, and somebody's going to have to eat. Like they did last year when it was, again, Isaiah McKenzie in that Week 16 game. Matchup specific, his speed and his burst against the player and coverage that he was working against, easy pitch and catch all day. I look for the Bills to hit these type of routes again, like they did against Detroit. I showed you in the Detroit clips, 2 of the 4 had those over pieces, those over aspects to it with McKenzie from the slot. One was a touchdown. The other one was there, but Allen just couldn't get to it because the pressure. If the protection can hold up, I should say, against the pressure, which is a legitimate if with how good the Patriots front is and how suspect the Bills O-line has been, these looks will be there against the Patriots when they go into single high. Again, it's got to be able to capitalize potentially. Ooh, man. It's, and as Mike says here, in addition to physical skills, it's amazing how cerebral an NFL QB has to be. I think that's such a part that, I think in general, the cerebral aspect of football is, I think, lost on a lot of people. Again, people refer to them as modern day gladiators, and they're wearing equipment and they're huge and strong and fast and they beat the hell out of one another. But it's a very cerebral, scientific game from a mental standpoint for everyone, let alone the quarterback he's got to ID coverages pre-snap, and he's got to ID protections depending on what the system is. Some systems have the center ID the protection, some have the quarterback. He's got to decipher what he's doing post-snap. And then also at the same time, those receivers have to ID the same thing the quarterback is IDing, especially, like Nick says, speed, chest on crack. That's fair. You get in an offense like the Bills, you have to see the same things because a lot of what the Bills have are sight adjustments based on the coverage. So, okay, if it's cover 2 and you're the outside receiver, you're going to run this route. If it's man coverage, you're going to run this route instead, right? If you're the slot receiver and it's man, you're doing A. If you read that it's zone, you're going to do B and sit in this hole right here. You have to see that as the receiver, and the quarterback has to see that at the same time, and you both have to be in line with one another. It's part of the reason why Cole Beasley was such an important piece of this Bills offense. He was such a great reader of leverage and coverage and functioned in space. And he and Josh saw things at the same time in the same way, and they had such a great rapport. He would often just find Cole Beasley because he knew, like, 3rd and 5. Oh, it's cover 4. I know Cole knows it's cover 4. Boom, there he is, open. And it's going to be tough. The Pats are going to make life difficult for Josh Allen tomorrow with what they're able to do. But they do have some vulnerabilities in terms of the identity that they have from a coverage standpoint on the back end in terms of their pre-snap shells and their post-snap coverages. Bills are going to have to protect. The 2 biggest things from the Bills' offensive standpoint in this game are, can they protect Josh Allen and can they run the football? Those are the biggest pieces. They cannot be siloed. Josh Allen is not in the position from a health standpoint, I think, to go Super Saiyan for an entire game and put the game on his shoulders like he did in Week 16 against New England. I think at this point, that's too much to ask. They need to be able to rely on something else other than Josh Allen. Now, in an ideal world, it's the run game. This page says, I really miss Beasley. I feel you on that. In an ideal world, it's the run game. Also in another world, maybe it's Ken Dorsey. Some scheme ability, some designers, good play calling, add a couple little extra wrinkles, more motion, more under center play action. I would like to see some tempo, especially if you get the Patriots into a personnel package that you want to take advantage of. Tempo, tempo, tempo. It's a good way to get a defense out of their comfort zone and really kind of put your foot on the gas and force them to play into areas that they necessarily do not want to. As Coach Chapman says, motion and formation changes can slow down a pass rush and slow down the defense. I wish Dorsey would use them. Yeah, it's just those little wrinkles, more motion, anything just, and not motion for the sake of motion like a Matt Canada Pittsburgh Steelers offense, but motion with the idea to create leverage on the outside of the formation or pull defenders from the box and create juicier run looks on the inside or even potentially on the outside versus those box counts. There's all these little pieces that stress the defense and make them have to hesitate or just play a fraction of a second slower, because in the NFL, with how good these athletes are, if you're a fraction of a second slow, you can get beat, right? It's a big difference. There's a big difference between a 4.0 40-yard dash and a 4.5 40-yard dash. Both guys are fast, but there's a big difference. Someone who runs a 4.0 40 is considered lightning quick. Someone who runs a half a second slower is considered more on the slower end of the spectrum. So if you can get someone to blink or pause or hesitate for a fraction of a second, that's a win. Dorsey needs to do more of those things. The play action percentage isn't too much off from last year. Last year, they were at 22% on the year. This year, they're at 19%, so only a 3 percentage point drop. But with some of the predictability or lack of creativity aspects you're seeing in the Bills' offense, being able to turn those dials up a bit more are a necessity given what you've been this far, what you've shown on tape. And also, again, Allen's playing well. He's still banged up. He's not 100%. You need to do whatever you can to alleviate pressure, literally, in terms of protecting him, but also in terms of design. Great. Coach, you're crushing it. Coach Chapman says motion to place horizontal pressure on the defense while the formation and concept can challenge vertically. Yes, make them play in layers. Make them have to recognize and choose, okay, which is the lesser of two evils. And then you read that and you pick and you attack based off of that. There's more chess matchery that Dorsey can potentially tweak and turn up in terms of dials for this Bills offense. And I think this is a week they're going to potentially need it, given how strong the Pats front is, given the vulnerabilities we've seen on the offensive line for the Buffalo Bills. And still Allen coming back from that injury, which is significant. Again, I know he's played, but he's got a tear in his UCL. That's a very important piece of the elbow, and the elbow is a very important piece to throwing the football, throwing anything in particular. So yeah, just a couple more wrinkles, a little more again, and it doesn't have to be all of these, right? It could be more motion. It could be more under center play action. It could be more success in the run game. It could be tempo. But being able to hit on all of them increases your odds, right? But even if they just lean into one, it's the start of something. We'll see what happens. Coach Chapman wants more Reggie Gilliam. I would be a fan of that. Again, the Bills had success in that playoff game, running 21 personnel with Gilliam. They were running power. They were running counter. They were running like old school football, like mash you, get at you. They were able to get on the edge a little bit. Dawson Knox had a really good game from a pass protection standpoint, or from a run blocking standpoint, I should say, and down blocking edges and outside linebackers and some of the bigger body dudes for the Pats. So I would be okay with that. They can't allow the Pats to live in their heavy DB personnel packages, because the Pats can get creative and disguise coverage with those looks. And I don't even mean that as a joke for the name of the show. The Pats can get creative with how they rotate in Phillips and Duggar and Jabril Peppers and where they line them up and what they do and how they attack. You have to make the Patriots as predictable as possible. You need to dictate to the Patriots. And it's going to start with more layers, more wrinkles to the offense, and more of a successful run game for the Buffalo Bills. So hugely, hugely, hugely important for the Buffalo Bills in this game. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Disguise Coverage. I want to thank Mr. Taylor Kyles for being an absolute tremendous guest on this show. I wanted to dive into more. Honestly, probably would have had him on for like what I had Russ on for last week with the Lions episode, where we just fully dove into it for like an hour and a half conversation, but he had to jet. So we filled in some different pieces here on the back end, but major thanks to Taylor Kyles. Absolutely phenomenal. If you didn't get to him in the beginning of this episode, go back, watch it. He was genuinely tremendously insightful, really knowledgeable dude about the Pats and about football. In general. While you're still here, if you enjoyed this episode, whether it was me, Taylor, the little snowman behind me, the big tree, whatever have you, please drop a like on this video if you're here live or watching later. I know it's corny to shill out and ask for that, but likes go a sincerely long way towards helping myself and this show and the team and channel as a whole to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. Oh, appreciate you, Bill. Bill coming in saying thanks, great show. Thank you very much. Yes, they're Robert, thank you very much. Says great show as usual and dropped a super chat. Thank you so much. Go Bills. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Coach Chapman says hit the like. Yes. Yes, hit the like. I also like what else you said here, Coach, saying crack Judon with Davis and run pin and pull at him. I love that. The Bills have been successful also with crack tosses this year, although they got a little predictable with it against Detroit, and Detroit sniffed it out, called it out, and snuffed it big time. On the second time, Malcolm Rodriguez just came crashing down hard. But yeah, get out on the perimeter against these bigger bodied, slower linebackers, the thumpers for the Patriots. More pin and pull, power, counter, crack toss, more dart. Take advantage of the movement, the athleticism you have on the offensive line and try and take advantage of their bigger, slower kind of dudes. But it's going to be battle up front. Drop a like on this video, please, 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 and thank you. Sincerely, it goes a long way towards helping myself and the entire team. Again, track, trend, algorithms, analytics, all that kind of stuff. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's awesome too. Thank you very much for your listen and or your download. Please subscribe to Disguise Coverage, whether on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Also, please leave a rating and a review. That goes a long way as well. Oh, thank you, Coach. Appreciate you. Thank you. I don't know why I did this. I meant to do this. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about this show. Word of mouth is still one of the best ways to transmit information, despite the advent of social media and email and all that kind of stuff. So tell your family, friends, and loved ones about how awesome this show is. Get them to try and watch it, please, and thank you. If you hated this show, tell your enemies to watch it and try and ruin their day or night, potentially, with this show. Again, huge thank you to Taylor. Huge thank you to Robert and to Ned for the super chats in this episode. Sincerely, I'm just thankful that anybody shows up and tunes in and is super appreciative of the work that I do. Oh, thanks, Mike. Appreciate you. But let alone when people actually donate to the cause, it's sincerely tremendous. So thank you for your donations, Robert and Ned. Thank you to everybody who joined us live here on the show for your comments, your questions, your thoughts, your concerns, your kind words for Taylor, your kind words for me. I greatly appreciate it sincerely, more than you will ever know. If you watched later, that's cool too. Thank you very much for your post live view, listen, download, podcasting apps or platforms, YouTube, whatever have you. Please drop a like on this video here on YouTube. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please subscribe to Disguise Coverage no matter where you are viewing or listening to this show. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well, staying safe, being kind to one another, taking care of one another. It's a big week. Starts off this AFC East kick for the Buffalo Bills. They play the Patriots, they play the Jets, they play the Dolphins. This is going to be a very definitive stretch for the Buffalo Bills, and it starts tomorrow night against the New England Patriots in Foxboro, in primetime, on Amazon. If you want to bet that action, you could bet, along with betting anything and everything when it comes to the NFL. And if you do bet, use BetUS and use the promo code Cover1. And why should you do that? Let's tell you why.
Hey guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has a live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between two exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code Cover1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins.
Betting increases the fun and excitement for some people. So again, download BetUS, go to BetUS, sign up, use the promo code Cover1, take advantage of the promotional opportunity that we have for you folks, just for you folks who are watching the channel and the show. And again, be kind to one another, take care of one another, be safe. I will see you folks next week for another episode of Disguise Coverage. And as always, Godspeed and go Bills.